So to draw your grid zone for a conflict dog tag Easter egg, you're ideally going to want a blank piece of paper or just any piece of paper, and you're going to want to orientate your paper vertically so you can accompany it with the 8x8 grid. I'm just doing this one horizontally because I don't have the camera equipment to be able to film myself drawing on a piece of paper, so that's what I'm doing on the computer. So this is going to be the worst computer penmanship that you've ever seen. I did not claim to be good in any way. This is probably my first time trying to draw something on a computer, so I do apologize. But to start off with, we're going to draw a kind of rectangle square like this. This is your green zone. All your sandbags are going to appear at the corners or at the edges on the dirt like that, on those four edges. Then what's going to happen is we're going to draw kind of like half plus signs. I just need to do these a bit bigger so I can easily split them later on. And I apologize for being slow with it because, as I said, I've never drawn on a computer before. There we go. I'm going to fill it. There we go. So this is the yellow zone. So this is not drawn to scale, but this is going to be your yellow zone. And these are going to be about 1 or 2 steps up depending on how you count your steps. These are always 1 to 2 steps up. Then we're going to do the same thing 2 more times. I draw half plus signs out here on the corners. And we're going to fill in that square. I'm just doing these particularly big because I know this is not drawn to scale and I need to show you how you can split your grid zone. Let's do it one more time. Well, this is going to be close to the edge, but that's all right. So yes, ideally you want to be doing this on a vertical piece of paper. And then let us finish with this. Oh, I'm so bad I did it outside the edge of the paper. I truly do apologize. But so once again, to recap, these 4 squares are your green zone. This is your yellow zone, which is about 1 or 2 steps up. The green zone is always on the dirt on the corners here. This orange zone, this is your orange zone. These are always about 3 or 4 steps up, depending on how you count them. And then this, lastly, this outer zone is your red zone, which is always the second to last step up, or about 6 to 7 steps from the bottom. Okay, and then so now what we need to do is split the orange and red zones. You don't split the green or yellow zones, and what I mean by that is they could have multiple positions. What I'm going to do first off though is Sharpie my corners. And I recommend that you do so too, so when you convert from sandbag or the fountain square grid to your 8x8 grid, you can orientate your positions on the corners. So I do like that. And also when I proceed to split the zones, you know, it's more like if they're close to these corners, you're more easily able to determine the position from that, but they're easily recognizable as corners, which is why I'm highlighting the corners here. Awesome. So from here, we're going to draw one line. I'm going to split, in quotes, the yellow zone by half. So there's 2 positions here. And then we need to split this line, which is one closer to the corner here, and then one there. So this line is actually supposed to be more in the middle of this one, but I really suck at drawing on the computer. Oops, sorry about that. I really suck at drawing the computer, so it's not drawn to scale. But once again, let's split that orange zone, which is that third, and then we're going to split the orange zone into the 2 red zones. So it's three red zones, 2 orange zones, 1 yellow zone, and the green's always going to just be blank like that. But yeah, so green and yellow are blank, and the orange and red are going to be split. So let's just do that for the entire grid. So split, split. So one in the middle of the yellow, 2 kind of splitting that middle of the orange. And then I'll do that once more. It'll be a little bit more clear with this one. But ideally, these should have the different dimensions on a much clearer. we're going to split that, and then split that for all around. And then you're going to do this for basically every zone. So that's an orange zone. That should be to the right of it, and that should be to the left. And there you go. That is your fountain square grid drawn very, very roughly, but I hope you have a better understanding of how to draw it from scratch now. This is a much more refined version of the fountain square grid that I drew earlier. Even though it's still not quite drawn to scale, I hope this serves as a better visual representation of how one might split the orange and red zones. But because I have a better version of the fountain square up now, let me quickly recap the sandbag positions. So these 4 squares are my green zone. The sandbags on the green zone will appear at the corners on the dirt, like so. On the next set of corners, so going from the bottom, the next set of corners, or this zone here, is my yellow zone. The sandbags on the yellow zone will appear about 1 to 2 steps away from the bottom. I say 1 to 2 steps away from the bottom because you'll notice in game that the first step is not a traditional height step. And so depending on your perspective or how you want to count it, I just would like to be more consistent with how players may approach this problem. It is the yellow zone sandbags are about 1 to 2 steps away from the bottom or the dirt. The next set of corners is my orange zone. The orange zone sandbags will appear about 3 to 4 steps away from the bottom or the dirt once again. Another way I like to see of how the orange sandbags may appear is that they will look or they will be placed in the middle of the staircases. What I mean by this is, let's say because there's a fountain statue here, if I'm looking in this up direction here or towards the German spawn, and I look, so this is my orange zone, I will see in the middle of the staircase, and I know this is the middle of the corners, but in the middle of this staircase, so about 3 to 4 steps up, the orange sandbags may or may not appear here in these zones. And lastly, we have our red zone. The sandbags on the red zone will appear about 6 to 7 steps away from the bottom. Another way I like to see it is that this red sandbags appear on the second to last step away from the bottom, or 1 to 2 steps away from the top. Okay? So to split our orange and red zones, what we're going to do is we are going to draw a line through the orange zone, and then we are going to split this orange zone line by drawing a square to compete. So now I will have 2 squares in the orange zone here. So I'm about to split it here, but so now I have a line splitting, and then I have 2 lines that split this. So it kind of looks like perhaps a binomial distribution about to happen. Let me do this again. In the orange zone here, I will split the middle of this little orange rectangle, and then I will split this orange rectangle with 2 more squares. So for every orange zone, I will have 2 squares. This is my corner, so don't get that confused. I will have 2 squares for the orange zone, and I will have 3 squares for every red rectangle or red zone here. Let me do that again. Split the middle here, and then I will split the orange zone with 2 more squares. This and that. and this square splits the orange zone line. Let me now repeat this for every orange zone and red zone. Start off with your orange zone, because starting off with the red zone may confuse you in how to split the orange zone. I've witnessed this a few times, is why I mention this. And I really do apologize for my poor computer penmanship. And that's a fully split, refined version of the graph. I will show this right now, but I really do recommend highlighting your corners like so. So you'll have 12 highlighted corners, and this will help you to better distinguish and position your sandbags not only in this fountain square grid, but also your corresponding 8x8 grid that you should have on the same piece of paper, as it helps you better to visualize the fountain square sandbags and the corresponding light positions on the grid zone inside the building or the chateau. I believe that is the 12th corner. So your fountain square grid, remember, this is not drawn to scale, but your fountain square grid should now look a little something like this. Please color code it if you would so like. I personally don't need to do that, but whatever helps you perform this Easter egg step better, I fully recommend, and I wish you all the best of luck in attempting a conflict dog tag Easter egg, now with your refined version of the fountain square grid. Here is an example of a fountain square grid. Disregard the pencil markings, as I've done this Easter egg with this piece of paper many times, but you can see a much more drawn to scale version of what you should have. You should notice the big spaces between the orange and red zones that allow you to split the zones more easily and determine those middle to corner positions. So the idea is that you will share your fountain square grid with an 8x8 grid. A good version of the 8x8 grid is shown below. Notice how there are 12 sandbag positions. But yes, so once you have your 12 X's marked on your fountain square grid, you want to translate this to 12 light circles on your 8x8 grid.